ChatGPT said. Prince William of the planet Orion stood at the balcony of his crystal palace, looking out at the twin suns setting over his shining world. From above, the royal city glowed like a jewel, filled with towers that touched the clouds and ships that floated between them. He had everything most people dreamed of: wealth beyond measure, loyal subjects across many worlds, and the power to shape the future of an empire. But despite all that, his heart was empty. People loved his crown, not him. Everywhere he went, people bowed and smiled, but he could see the truth in their eyes. They admired the prince, not the person. His father had always told him that love was a weakness, something that distracted rulers from their duty. Yet, deep inside, William could not silence the quiet ache that told him life had to mean more than commands and ceremonies. In his private chambers, he removed his golden robe and looked at himself in the mirror. He saw a man hidden beneath symbols of power, a man who wanted to be known, not worshipped. His closest advisor, Lord Rian, entered the room, confused to see the prince in simple clothes. William smiled faintly and said, "Tell no one, but I am leaving Orion." Rian's eyes widened. "Leave? But your highness, your coronation is soon." "The council," William raised his hands softly. "They will manage without me. I must know if I can be loved for who I am, not for what I rule." He spent weeks preparing in secret. He studied Earth's languages, customs, and history. He learned how to use old tools, things no prince ever touched. Finally, one night he boarded a small ship hidden in the palace hangar. He wore plain clothes, carried only a simple toolbox, and had one small identity chip marked with a human name, James Walker. The ship crossed light years in moments. When it landed in a quiet corner of Earth, in a small English town called Brookfield, the stars above looked closer than ever. The air smelled of rain and soil, not perfume and metal. James stepped out, breathing deeply. It felt strange but peaceful. Here no one bowed. No one called him Your Highness. He was just another man. The first few days were difficult. He rented a small room above a bakery where the landlady, Mrs. Ellis, thought he was just another worker. He told her he could fix things: radios, watches, bicycles, and soon word spread. People began bringing their broken things to James the repairman. He worked with quiet skill, fixing what others had thrown away. He didn't use his advanced knowledge from Orion. He wanted to do it the human way. Each time someone smiled and said thank you, it warmed him more than any royal praise ever had. One afternoon, as he repaired an old clock in a local shop, he met her, Emma. She was the owner of the shop, a young woman with kind eyes and a voice that carried calmness. She thanked him for fixing her clock and offered him a cup of tea. As they sat together talking about simple things like books and weather, James felt something unfamiliar but wonderful: ease. There was no pretending, no distance. Just conversation. Over the next few days he returned to her shop often, sometimes to fix things, sometimes just to talk. Emma was curious about him. "You speak differently," she said once. "Where are you from?" James smiled faintly. "A long way from here," he said softly, and that was all. She didn't press him further, and that trust made him like her even more. At night, he would lie awake in his small room, staring at the wooden ceiling, remembering the stars of Orion. He missed them, but not as much as he expected. Here on this quiet planet, life felt real. He repaired, he earned, he laughed. For the first time, he didn't feel like a prince living under pressure. He felt like a man living a life that mattered. But old habits were hard to forget. Sometimes he would look at the town's night sky and whisper to himself in Orion's language, remembering the voice of his mother, the queen, who had told him as a child, "The stars belong to everyone, but love is what makes them shine." Her words echoed in him now more than ever. One rainy evening, as he was fixing a radio in the shop, the lights flickered. Emma brought him a blanket and sat nearby, watching him work. "You're very patient," she said. James smiled without looking up. "Patience teaches you more than power ever can." She looked at him curiously, surprised by his answer. "You speak like a teacher," she teased. He chuckled quietly. "Maybe I just listened too much." He realized then that he was starting to care deeply about her. He didn't understand why. Perhaps it was her honesty, her laughter, or the way she treated everyone equally. She never once asked him about his past or his money. She liked him just as he was. That made him afraid and happy at the same time. As weeks passed, James became part of the town. He fixed bicycles for children, helped an old man repair his roof, and even mended the bakery oven for Mrs. Ellis. Everyone liked him. They said he was humble and kind. But none of them knew he was a prince from the stars. Sometimes, when Emma spoke about her dreams, of one day traveling and seeing the world, he would look at her and think, "If only you knew how big the world really is." But he stayed silent. He didn't want to ruin what they had with truth that sounded like madness. Yet deep down he knew this peace could not last forever. His people would eventually notice his absence. The royal ships could track him. He had only bought himself time. One night, standing alone by the river, he looked up at the stars and whispered, "If love finds me here, I will never go back." It was a promise to himself, one he hoped the universe would allow him to keep. He didn't see the small blue light blinking faintly in the sky above, a signal from Orion, searching for its missing prince. The quiet town of Brookfield slept peacefully that night, unaware that a man from another world was among them, fixing broken clocks while trying to repair something much greater, his own lonely heart. James woke early every morning to the sound of birds outside his small window. The smell of bread from the bakery below filled the air as he got ready for another day of work. Life in the small English town had become peaceful and full of purpose. Every tool he held, every machine he repaired, gave him a feeling of satisfaction that no royal banquet or golden hall had ever given him. People had started calling him the man who could fix anything. Radios, bikes, heaters, and even small drones found their way to his table. He worked quietly, never seeking praise. When people thanked him, he only smiled and nodded. He liked being invisible. For once, he didn't have to live up to anyone's expectations. No council meetings, no guards following him, just his hands, his tools, and his thoughts. One bright afternoon, Mrs. Ellis sent him to fix a broken power converter in a nearby shop. The sign read, "Emily's Electronics." The small shop was neat but filled with half-repaired gadgets and tangled wires. Behind the counter stood a woman with brown hair tied up messily, her face focused as she studied a small circuit board. When James entered, she looked up briefly. "You're the repairman, right? Mrs. Ellis said you could help." Her tone was calm but direct. James nodded and set down his toolbox. "Yes, ma'am. I'll take a look." As he bent over the converter, she crossed her arms, watching him. He worked carefully, his movement steady. Within minutes, the machine hummed back to life. Emily raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's faster than I expected." "You sure you're just a local handyman?" she asked, half joking. James smiled faintly. "I've had some practice," he replied. From that day, she called him often for help, fixing her shop lights, updating her equipment, or repairing drones customers brought in. Sometimes they worked side by side, and though she didn't talk much at first, James noticed she listened when he spoke. Emily was unlike anyone he had ever met. She wasn't impressed by wealth or charm. She didn't wear fancy clothes or pretend to be someone else. She was real, simple, strong, and proud of her work. James found that deeply admirable. On Orion, people were always pretending to be more than they were. Here, Emily was enough just as she was. Days turned into weeks, and he began looking forward to visiting her shop more than anything else. They talked about everything, the weather, the town gossip, and sometimes dreams. She told him how she had built her shop from nothing after her father passed away. "People said a woman couldn't run a tech shop," she said one afternoon, soldering a wire. "But I proved them wrong." James looked at her with quiet respect. "You did it on your own," he said softly. "That's harder than most people know." She smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Hard work keeps me too busy to think about much else." Sometimes after work, they shared tea and watched the sunset through the shop window. Emily laughed rarely, but when she did, it filled the small room with warmth. James often found himself staring, wondering how someone so ordinary could make the world feel extraordinary. He had to remind himself that he wasn't really James. He was Prince William of Orion, heir to one of the greatest empires in the galaxy. Yet each day that title felt further away. Here he wasn't a prince. He was a man fixing drones and drinking tea with a woman who had no idea who he truly was. And that made him happy. Still, he was careful. He never spoke about his past, never slipped into the language of his homeworld. Once, when Emily asked about his family, he simply said, "They live far away." She didn't pry. "Sometimes distance is good," she said quietly. "It teaches you who you really are." Her words struck him deeply. She didn't know it, but they reflected everything he was feeling. On Orion, he had been surrounded by millions yet felt alone. On Earth, he was surrounded by strangers, but for the first time he felt connected. As time passed, the town began to notice how often James and Emily worked together. Some people teased them gently, saying they made a good team. Emily would roll her eyes, pretending not to care, but James saw the faint smile she tried to hide. One evening, the two were repairing a delivery drone that had crashed outside town. It was getting dark and the wind was cold. Emily shivered slightly. Without a word, James took off his jacket and placed it on her shoulders. She looked at him, surprised but didn't say no. "You're strange, James," she said softly. "You don't act like most men here." He chuckled quietly. "Maybe I'm just different." "Different how?" she asked curiously. He paused for a long moment before replying. "I guess I've seen too much of the world to be proud of small things. I just want a peaceful life now." Emily smiled faintly. "Then maybe you came to the right place." Her words echoed in his heart long after he walked home that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing he was falling in love. Not the kind of love that came with titles or promises, but something gentle and true. He knew it was dangerous. If anyone from Orion found him, everything would fall apart. His disguise, his peace, his chance at a simple life, it would all vanish. But for now he didn't care. Each morning he woke up and saw Emily's smile was worth more than all the stars in his kingdom. As days passed, they became inseparable. When her tools broke, she called him. When she laughed, it was often because of something he said. She started trusting him with her secrets, and he trusted her with his silence. Still deep down he feared the truth. How would she look at him if she knew he was not from this world? Would she see him as a liar or as the same man who fixed her drones and carried her boxes? He didn't have the answer. All he knew was that for now he didn't want to lose what they had. In that quiet town, between broken machines and unspoken hearts, an alien prince found something he had never known among the stars: love that felt human. Life in the little town had changed William in ways he never expected. Every day felt full and real, something he had never known on Orion. On his home planet, everything was perfect: clean cities, shining towers, and people who spoke to him with practiced politeness. But here things were different. People argued, laughed, helped each other, and cared in small, honest ways. William, now known to everyone as James, found comfort in that imperfection. Each morning he opened his small workshop near the market square. Children came running to him with broken drones, old toys, and cracked devices. He would sit on a wooden stool, fixing them patiently while the children watched with wide eyes. When he returned their things, they always smiled and thanked him as if he had done something magical. Sometimes he would tell them little stories about the stars, simple tales of faraway worlds that he disguised as bedtime stories. The kids loved it. The locals soon began to treat him as part of their community. The baker would save him a loaf of bread every morning. The old postman, Mr. Harris, often stopped by just to chat about the weather. Emily, however, had become his closest friend. She often visited his workshop with a cup of tea and stayed to talk while he worked. They spoke about ordinary things, like the broken bridge outside town or the new shop opening nearby, but those moments meant everything to him. For the first time, William understood what real peace felt like. There were no guards following him, no rules about how to sit or speak, no pressure to make decisions that affected millions. Here he was just James, the quiet repairman who fixed things and smiled often. But beneath that peace, a shadow of guilt was growing. Each time Emily laughed with him or trusted him with her worries, he felt a pinch in his chest. She thought he was an ordinary man. She had no idea he came from a world far beyond her sky, that he was heir to a galactic throne. Sometimes at night he would sit alone under the stars, staring at the distant glow of the Milky Way. Somewhere out there, his planet was searching for him. He knew the Royal Council must be panicking. He was the only heir of Orion, and his disappearance would not go unnoticed. He tried not to think about it, but he couldn't help imagining his mother, the Queen, watching news reports, her voice calm but her eyes full of worry. The council members would be arguing, ships would be scanning nearby systems, and every interplanetary news channel would have his face on the screen: missing, Prince William of Orion. The thought scared him. Not because he feared being found, but because he didn't want to leave the life he had built. One evening, as he and Emily closed her shop together, she smiled and said, "You've become quite famous around here, James. Everyone says you can fix anything." He laughed softly. "Not everything," he replied. "Oh? What can't you fix?" she teased, handing him a small box of broken parts. He looked at her for a long moment before saying, "Some things can't be fixed with tools." She tilted her head, puzzled. "Like what?" He smiled sadly. "Secrets." Emily chuckled, unaware of the weight behind his words. "Well, good thing you don't seem to have any," she said lightly. But inside, William felt the guilt deepen. He wanted to tell her everything, that he was not from this world, that his real name wasn't James, and that one day ships might appear in the sky to take him home. Yet every time he tried, something stopped him. Maybe fear. Maybe love. Maybe both. The following week, strange signals began appearing on his small repair scanner. It was a device from Orion he had secretly rebuilt to monitor distant transmissions. He had kept it hidden under his bed, afraid someone might notice. One night, it blinked red, an unmistakable sign that ships were near. His heart sank. They were close. He knew what that meant. The royal fleet was coming to Earth. The council must have tracked his energy signature or found his ship, which he had hidden deep in the woods. He had only days left before they arrived. That night he couldn't sleep. He walked through the quiet streets, the cool wind brushing his face. The town was silent except for the sound of crickets and the faint glow of lights from Emily's shop. He stood outside for a long moment, watching her window. He wanted to knock, to tell her everything before it was too late. But how could he explain something so impossible? The next day he was distracted at work. Emily noticed. "You look tired," she said gently. "Is everything all right?" He forced a smile. "Just didn't sleep well." She frowned but didn't press him. "You know, you can tell me if something's bothering you," she said softly. He looked at her and almost broke. The way she said it, with such genuine care, made him want to confess everything. But before he could speak, a group of townspeople walked in, laughing, breaking the moment. He just nodded and got back to work. That night, he returned to his small home and packed a few things, a habit from his royal days. He knew he might have to run soon. Still, his heart ached at the thought of leaving without saying goodbye. The scanner blinked again. This time the signal was stronger. The fleet had entered Earth's orbit. He stared at it, feeling the walls close in. He whispered to himself, "Not yet. Please, not yet." All he wanted was a little more time. A few more days to live as James. A few more sunsets. A few more smiles from Emily. But deep inside he knew the truth. The life he had built in this town was borrowed time. The world of stars was calling him back, and the simple life he loved was slipping away with every blink of that scanner. As he looked out his window one last time that night, he thought about the irony of it all. He had crossed galaxies searching for love, and now that he had found it, he was about to lose it. That evening, the small town was quiet except for the soft hum of the wind. James, as everyone knew him, stood in Emily's little shop fixing the flickering ceiling light. The smell of warm tea and solder filled the air. Emily sat on the counter, watching him with a gentle smile. "You really can fix anything," she said softly. James chuckled and replied, "Sometimes it just takes patience." His words made her smile wider. There was a calm between them, the kind of peace that only comes from trust and care. But deep in James's heart, a storm was brewing. He knew something was coming. He could feel it in his bones, a pull from far away. Home was calling him back. As he tightened the last screw, a faint vibration ran through the floor. The windows began to rattle. Emily frowned and looked outside. The night sky glowed brighter and brighter until it was almost golden. James froze. His eyes widened. He knew that light. It was the mark of an Orion royal ship, a vessel from his world. The people outside started shouting, pointing toward the sky as a giant ship descended through the clouds, shining like liquid gold. Its engines hummed softly as it landed in the empty field near the town square. Dust swirled around the shop. Emily turned to him, confusion in her eyes. "James, what is that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. James opened his mouth but couldn't speak. He wanted to lie but he couldn't anymore. The door suddenly burst open, and several figures stepped inside, tall, armored guards wearing dark blue suits with silver emblems that shimmered under the shop lights. The townspeople gasped and backed away as one of the guards dropped to one knee before James. "Your Highness," the guard said, bowing deeply. "Prince William of Orion, we have finally found you." The world around Emily seemed to stop. She stared at James, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Prince?" she repeated in a whisper. The man standing in front of her, the one who drank tea with her, who laughed with her, who fixed her old radio, was not James at all. Her mind raced. The guards addressed him again. "Your father, the king, demands your return. The galaxy is in turmoil without its prince." James, no William, felt his chest tighten. He stepped back, trying to speak. "Wait," he said, holding up a hand. "Please, not here." But it was too late. The entire town had gathered outside, staring at the golden ship and the strange soldiers. People murmured to each other, shock and curiosity mixing in their voices. "A prince?" someone whispered. "From where?" Emily's heart pounded. She looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "You lied to me," she said quietly. William took a step forward, his face filled with regret. "Emily, please listen to me," he began. I never wanted to lie. I just wanted a normal life even for a short time. I wanted someone to see me, not my crown. Emily shook her head, backing away from him. Her hands trembled. You could have told me the truth, she said. You made me believe you were like us. I trusted you. Her voice broke on the last word. The guards stood silently, watching the exchange but saying nothing. The people outside whispered even louder now. William could feel their eyes on him, heavy and judging. He tried again, his voice soft and desperate. Everything I said to you was real. Every moment we shared, it was not a lie. I love you, Emily. But Emily couldn't look at him. To her, the man she had known was gone. The one standing before her was a stranger wrapped in secrets. You love me? She asked, almost laughing through her tears. You don't even know how to be honest. She turned away, and William felt the weight of her words crush him. Outside, the guards spoke quietly into their communicators. The royal ship's lights dimmed to signal departure. One of the guards stepped closer. Your Highness, we must leave. The king awaits. William didn't move. His eyes stayed on Emily. Give me a moment, he said softly. He walked closer to her, his voice shaking. Emily, please. I never meant to hurt you. I thought if you knew who I really was, you would treat me differently. I just wanted to be a man, not a prince. I wanted to be worthy of your love. Emily didn't answer. Her eyes were red, her face pale. You were worthy, she whispered. But you chose lies over truth. And love built on lies can never last. The silence that followed was deep and painful. William's heart broke at her words. The guards waited patiently, knowing their prince was facing a different kind of battle. One no sword or starship could help him win. He turned slowly toward the door. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. When he reached the entrance, he looked back one more time. Emily was standing still, tears on her cheeks, her arms wrapped around herself. She didn't move. He wanted to run back, to hold her, to beg her forgiveness, but he knew she needed time, maybe more than he could give. As he stepped outside, the golden ship's ramp opened. The crowd parted, bowing in confusion and awe as the prince walked by. The air hummed with energy. The guards followed him into the ship, and within moments the engines roared. A gust of wind swept through the town, lifting dust and leaves into the air. The light grew brighter, and then the ship lifted off, disappearing into the night sky. Emily watched from her shop doorway, her heart aching as the light faded into the stars. The man she had loved was gone, taken back to a world far beyond her reach. But the memories remained. Every smile, every word, every laugh, it all still lived in her heart. She whispered softly to herself, "Goodbye, James, or whoever you really are." Far above Earth, inside the royal ship, William sat by the window, staring at the small blue planet shrinking beneath him. His reflection looked tired, almost empty. He had all the power and wealth in the galaxy, yet he had never felt so poor. Love, he realized, was not something that could be found by hiding who you were. It demanded honesty no matter the risk. The stars passed by, glowing softly outside. The guards saluted him, but he barely noticed. His mind was filled with the image of Emily's tearful face. He wished he could turn back time, tell her everything from the start, and live honestly as both a prince and a man. But now all he could do was carry the lesson she had taught him: the value of truth, the strength of love, and the cost of deception. Back in the small town, the people would talk for years about the strange night when a golden ship came from the sky. Some said it was a dream, others swore it was real. But for Emily it was both, a dream that had been real and a reality that felt like a dream. Weeks passed, and the twin suns of Orion rose and fell over the silver towers of the royal city. Prince William sat alone on the balcony of his grand palace. The view before him stretched across mountains made of crystal and seas that glowed in the light of two suns, but none of it brought him peace. The laughter of his people echoed below, and the sounds of music floated through the air, yet his heart was quiet, empty even. He had everything most people could ever dream of: wealth, power, and the respect of an entire galaxy. But he no longer wanted any of it. What he wanted was something far smaller, simpler, and infinitely more precious. He wanted Emily. He thought of her every day, the way she smiled when she worked, the sound of her laughter when he told bad jokes, and the warmth in her voice when she called him James. Those moments had felt real in a way that his royal life never did. But now he sat alone, surrounded by riches that meant nothing. The golden walls of his room shone, but inside him, everything felt dull. The crown on his head weighed like a stone. Since returning to Orion, William had tried to act like a prince again. He attended royal meetings, signed documents, and spoke at galactic councils. But no matter how much he tried, his heart refused to listen. During dinners, his mind drifted back to the small town on earth, the smell of tea, the sound of rain, and the feeling of grease on his hands as he fixed broken machines. He had been happier as a poor repairman than he ever was as a prince. One night, as he sat alone in the palace garden, his mother, the queen, approached him quietly. Her eyes were soft but filled with worry. "My son," she said gently, "you have been different since your return. Your duties wait for you, yet you seem far away." William sighed, staring at the glowing flowers. "I am far away, mother. My heart is still on earth." The queen looked at him for a long time. "Love," she said softly, "is both a gift and a test. But remember who you are." "I know who I am," William replied. "That's the problem. I am a prince who does not want to be one. I am tired of being loved for what I am supposed to be. I just want to be loved for who I truly am." The queen's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled faintly. "Then follow your heart, my son. But know that every choice has a cost." The next morning, William stood before the royal mirror in his chamber. He saw his reflection, tall, proud, wrapped in royal blue and silver, but he barely recognized himself. "This man," he whispered, "is not me." His decision was clear. He would give it all up. By afternoon, the entire palace was alive with activity. The great broadcast hall was prepared for an official speech. Billions of people across galaxies tuned in to watch. Reporters speculated that he might announce a royal engagement or a new alliance. None of them knew the truth. When the lights dimmed, William walked to the center of the grand hall. His face was calm, his hands steady. The world waited. "My people," he began, his voice deep and clear. "For years I have served as your prince. I have worn this crown with pride. But today I speak not as a prince, but as a man." The crowd fell silent. Even the ministers froze. William continued, "I once left Orion to live among ordinary people. There, I learned something that no royal tutor could ever teach. I learned that true worth does not come from power or titles. It comes from honesty, kindness, and love. I cannot continue to rule while my heart belongs elsewhere. I have decided to step down from my royal position." Gasps filled the hall. People murmured in disbelief. "I am abdicating the throne," William said firmly. "My brother will rule in my place. As for me, I will walk among the stars as a free man. No titles. No crown. Just William." He took off his crown and placed it gently on the podium. The cameras flashed, the galaxy went silent, and his voice echoed through the hall one last time. "Orion will always be my home, but my heart has found another." Then he bowed and walked away. That evening, as the sun set behind the palace, William boarded a small personal starship. He carried no guards, no gold, no royal insignia, only a simple jacket and the same old toolbox he had once used on Earth. When the engines roared to life, the ship lifted off and vanished into the endless black sky, leaving behind a world of luxury for one filled with love. The journey to Earth took a few hours in cosmic time, but to William, it felt like a lifetime. When he finally arrived, the blue planet glowed beneath him, beautiful and calm. He landed near the same small town that had changed his life. As he stepped out of the ship, the cool air touched his face, and for the first time in months he smiled freely. The town looked exactly as he remembered. The little park. The cobblestone road. The sound of people chatting near the bakery. He walked slowly, nervous but hopeful, his heart beating fast. When he reached Emily's electronics shop, he saw her through the glass window. She was repairing an old drone, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked the same, strong, graceful, and real. William hesitated for a moment, then opened the door. The small bell chimed softly. Emily looked up and froze. The screwdriver fell from her hand and rolled across the counter. "James?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He smiled faintly. "No secrets this time," he said. "My name is William. But I don't want to be a prince anymore. I just want to be the man who fixes things." Emily stared at him, tears filling her eyes. "You gave it all up?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Everything. The throne, the ships, the palace. None of it mattered without you." Silence filled the room. Emily's heart raced. The man she once loved had returned, not in royal robes, but as the humble worker she had first met. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. He took a deep breath. "Because I finally understand what love means. It's not about crowns or galaxies. It's about truth. You showed me that. You made me human." A single tear slid down her cheek. She stepped closer, searching his eyes for lies, but there were none. Only honesty, only love. "You came back," she said softly. "I did," he said. "If you'll let me, I'd like to stay. Maybe fix your lights again." For a moment she said nothing. Then she smiled, small, real, and full of warmth. "You never change," she said gently. "Maybe that's a good thing," he replied. She laughed, and the sound melted the silence between them. Slowly she reached for his hand. "No more lies." "No more lies," he promised. She nodded. "Then maybe we can start again." William smiled, his heart full for the first time in his life. Outside, the sun shone through the shop window, bathing them in light. The little town continued its quiet rhythm, unaware that a prince had just traded a galaxy for love. And as they stood together, hand in hand, Emily whispered, "Welcome home." He smiled softly. "I'm finally where I belong."